At some point, they pulled up the rails, and they put down concrete. The question we're asking ourselves, and the question I pose to you, is what do I do with that concrete strip? Here are the potential answers, and I don't like any of them. That's why if I had the right answer, I wouldn't present it to you. I'd just tell you here's the answer. Answer one would be, let's leave the concrete where it is. It tends to delineate the trolley track. You'll remember again in our original incarnation when we were going to redo the street completely, our plan had been to put in a pattern of bricks in that orientation to kind of remind us of where those trolley tracks were. But of course that was when we were going to put down a brand new street surface on a brand new base. Choice one then is to leave the concrete pretty much in place and not attempt to move it out and try to put bricks in. Positives on that side, it will be less disruptive to the bricks that are adjacent to it. It'll be less disruptive overall. Negatives, obviously, some people might find the aesthetics of that concrete strip down there less satisfying than if it was brick altogether. So option two would be to try to dig up all of this concrete. Downside would be I'm going to have to affect a number of bricks as I do that and kind of tie it all together in kind of a challenging process, because some of them there's actually a border of bricks along there. Positive side, the aesthetics of that all done might be a little more attractive than the concrete. So that's one that I'd like to have some feedback from you all on
Mike, let me do this again. Leave in place, and the second one.
The second one would be to try to go in here and take some of this concrete out. And there may be a third choice that I've not been smart enough to think about, and that I'll hear about shortly. The other one, I guess maybe in the interest of truth in advertising, make sure you understand that in our current plans, we are not intending to go back and do much in the way of reconstruction of the existing brick street, so that we have some areas, for example, that are challenging. Let's take this one, for example, and our friends, if you look at some of the photos, they actually took a few photos after a rainfall. You can see what happens in a number of these curb areas as we get some ponding of water, fairly substantial ponding of water. The question kind of out there is it okay that I am not going to do a whole lot to that phenomenon? The good side is I'm not disrupting the bricks. The downside to that one is I will have a less pleasing approach. And where it really gets challenging is, let's say that one of these areas is right here, where I'm doing an excavation already to tie in a water line to an adjacent house. How do I balance the minimally affect the bricks while I have to dig up a few bricks? It can get very quickly into an environment where I touch one brick and therefore I have to touch the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I don't want to do that because I want to be faithful to the idea of minimally affecting the bricks. That one is maybe more of a design detail and one we have to work with the contractor on as we get into it. Again, bear in mind that this is going to be done in the context of a bid contract, which means I have to have some specificity as when I tell that contractor to go out there, here's what I want you to do. The nature of this job is not that I go tell the contractor, go get your backhoe and then I'll tell you what to do day by day and we'll kind of pay you by the hour. That's not the way the city usually does business, although I hope I'm going to have some ability to do some flexibility as we get into the project. So anyway, those two, one question, one issue are kind of out there. The issue of the concrete tracks, if you will, and the issue of the bricks that are already intact but are not particularly aesthetically pleasing today because there's some low areas. That especially occurs up against the curb when I've had some settlement and I have a low spot and I've got what we call in our business, highly technical term, a bird bath. That is when it rains and 3 days later you come by and you still got a good bit of water. As I said, I think we still have some good and productive work to do on the specifics of these bore pits. We're moving to design. We are now shifting into the detailed design phase of this thing, trying to move this thing forward. Our plan is to have this thing ready for construction by the end of this year, and then to begin construction hopefully right at the end of the year or the first of next year. So we are proceeding with some urgency. So with that, I know I skipped a lot of history. I'm assuming that most folks here are aware of most of the history, and I didn't want to review most of that. Tell you that, again, the objectives of this project are to put in a new 21st century water line to meet the needs of all of the residents and institutions that are along this area, as well as to be faithful to the historic brick surface that is there and to minimally disrupt it. We're going to use what are, to some degree, emerging techniques, but this is not, I wouldn't say it's bleeding edge type technology. It may be some leading edge technology. We have used tunneling in a number of applications and believe we'll be successful in doing that in putting this water line in, as well as in putting the borings. You have to, each one of these green then connotes a crossing under the street, because I've got to bring a new service line to tie into that water line to serve each one of those residences and institutions up and down the street. I think the elimination of the sewer is a great step forward, because it eliminates a lot of the disruption that we have to do and a lot of the digging and replacement of bricks. I think we can emerge with a 21st century utility system, water and sewer, and be faithful to the historic preservation aims on the brick streets. I'd especially like to hear from you about the issue, the kind of the thorny issue of the concrete tracks, as well as anything else. Robert?
I was outside. I didn't hear your presentation. But when you finish with your concrete work, put your sewage line, water lines, and all this, then what will be done to the street itself?
Well, the street itself, the marching orders we have right now are to be as minimally working in the street as possible. Now that is, we will take the areas that are covered with asphalt and take the asphalt off the bricks. We can. We will replace bricks where we have done borings and construction work. We expect that to be a very small percentage of the total surface of the roadway. And as for the remainder of the bricks, it is our intent at this point to basically leave them intact. That's going to leave a not a 21st century road surface.
Second question. When you complete doing what you've done, will it be again a brick street, or will it be a combination?
Well, that's one of the questions. It will be a predominantly brick street. Our intent is to use the bricks that we've stockpiled from previous activities, and we have some in our warehouse, to make this substantially a brick street. The areas in question that would possibly not be brick is that kind of railway concrete. As I pointed out, that one is a tough trade-off in my mind. If I go in and try and put in bricks there, I'm going to necessarily have to disrupt a lot of bricks to get those bricks into that fairly narrow set of tracks. On the other hand, if I leave the concrete there, I'm an engineer. I'm not necessarily the aesthetic person, but I can see people looking at a picture like this, where you can see the concrete track, and say, I can live with that. I think that's it's a reminder that there was a railway there. I can see other people looking at that and wondering what the city sure did a halfway job here. There were bricks there. Well, there weren't bricks there, actually. I guess there was a rail bed, and boy, they should have done something else.